Hello again, friends. The great Brian Last here, you there, and we have some breaking news audio. Of course, we have already recorded the drive-thru for this week. This is an exclusive to YouTube, although we will find a way maybe to include this at the end of the recorded drive-thru. But breaking news, we didn't want to wait till the experience. And to talk about this news, the leader of the cult of Cornette, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Well, you didn't even tell him what the news was, Brian. And after all, everybody knows when news breaks, we take it back and get a refund. And the big news, the plethora, the tidal wave, the tsunami of walkouts continues in the WWE. People are about as happy working for that company as if they had crotch rot. And now, I got to be honest with you, because everybody knows I don't watch Raw live because that disables my fast forward feature that saves my freaking life. But I get up this morning with the chickens and the pigeons and whatever else gets up early in the morning. And I turn on the internet machine and I see the headline, like unexpected talent walkout on Raw. And I broke my neck to click on that because I had visions in between the sugar plums and the dancing fairies in my head of like 15 of the guys just suddenly said, fuck it, and walked to the ring and said, you know what, kiss my ass, and walked out on camera. I'm thinking, what in the goddamn world happened on live television? But we find out that it was still shocking, still newsworthy, people buzzing about it, but it wasn't a mass exodus. It was Sasha Banks and Naomi basically said, fuck you to this creative that you have planned for us, and we shall be departing. But it wasn't even a hostile. I mean, how many times have we talked about guys in the past have kept title belts and fuck you and whatever? They walked right into old John Laryngitis' office, set their Raw Women's Tag Team Championship belts down and said, we choose not to participate, and turned around and left. And this was apparently right as the show was going on the air. Is this what's being reported, Brian? Have I summarized that apparently fairly correctly?
Fairly correctly, I believe so. And let's talk a little bit about how the news got out. You say this is what's being reported. The story broke from Mike Johnson, a PW Insider and PW Insider Elite, at 9:05 p.m. So that's 5 minutes after Raw goes on the air. The headline was...
No, wait, not 9:05, 8:05.
Oh, excuse me.
Remember, they're 3 hours.
Excuse me. 9:05 p.m. is when he reported it, so this is an hour.
He had it
and
within 60 minutes. If he'd have had it at 8:05, they would have told him first before they told old Johnny Ace.
I'm thinking about the good old days when Raw was 1 hour from 9 to 10.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But the headline, Raw main event changed after talents walk out of taping. The main event for tonight's Monday Night Raw broadcast changed at the last minute to Becky Lynch versus Asuka, after two talents walked out late in the day as Raw went on the air in Norfolk, Virginia. The word making the rounds backstage at the taping is that Sasha Banks took issue with some of the planned creative for the original main event, a Raw six-pack challenge to determine Bianca Belair's next challenger at Hell in a Cell. Banks had a meeting with Vince McMahon, and the belief amongst those we've heard from is that when McMahon didn't choose to change direction on the plans, Banks wouldn't back down on her issues and made the decision to leave the taping. Naomi, her WWE Women's Tag Team Championship partner, left with Banks, even though she was also booked in the main event match. WWE quickly shot several new segments with Adam Pearce and Becky Lynch to instead set up Asuka vs. Lynch as the new main event. And this was a developing story when that post went up, but that's how the word got out. Mike Johnson broke the story.
Boom! Shattered it, as a matter of fact. And you know what? And there's more out on PW Insider, and the talents involved, Sasha and Naomi, have said some things. We're going to bring that up in a second. But you know what? I was talking to you right before we decided to do this breaking news announcement. And I said, boy, normally in wrestling, like there was a mass walkout in Atlanta in 1972. They called it a mass walkout when all the talent went with Ann Gunkel, but they just didn't show up to the next town. And there's a lot of times down through history, guys would just leave the territory and you'd never see them again. They might take the belt. We've told all those stories, but it's not often that people actually show up and then depart. And most of the modern history of that has been in the WWE. Jeff Hardy literally walked out of the match, climbed the rail and said, see you, and went out the vomitorium into Concourse C or whatever. And Tony Storm literally not only walked out, but flew out, went all the way back to Australia, right? That wasn't too long ago. And do you know the one we missed when we were talking about famous walkouts? Brian, you know the one that you and me both proved that we're way too burnt from doing too many shows lately, the one we missed?
Luger?
No, me and Stan Lane.
Oh, how did we miss that? Jesus.
We're like racking our brains. Who walked out? And we're trying to, me and Stan Lane.
Yeah, Bobby stayed.
But over the same basic goddamn thing. What the fuck are you doing to us on the air, right?
So you understand the mindset, so...
Yes. Of course it was... I mean, there's all different sides of this, right? And at this point, I admire the backbone. But goddamn, with all the things that all these people are doing in every company, it doesn't really matter anymore. The one beats the other, but go ahead. Let's get started.
Well, during the show, again, the fans at home have no idea what's going on. Corey Graves, who many people think is just repeating a lot of things that Vince McMahon tells him to say, or at least things that Vince McMahon would like to hear.
I can't imagine that would be happening in his ear on a constant basis.
He said, quote, Sasha Banks and Naomi summarily and unprofessionally walked out. So again, that was just said on commentary in the middle of the show.
Yes, and of course, Corey Graves looks like a guy who will use the word summarily in a sentence naturally. Everything sounds like Vince. All the statements sound exactly like Vince, because here's the thing, as Mike reported in an update here, which we may get into. As we said, they found out about this at the gorilla position, Vince and whoever the minions are, either right before or right after the show went on the air. And I can't imagine, my God, Vince's head temperature probably melted part of the polar ice cap after he's already had a couple of conferences that day, because they went to him and expressed their displeasure. And then it sounds to me like he said, well, we'll think about it. But they were told later on, no, we're going with what we said. And that's when they went in and quit. So he thought that it was already over with. And then right as they go on the air live, and this is they've already promoted the match. It's taking up considerable time in the live program. Vince, he might like to change things up to the last minute. But once you're on the air, he's not a fan of it. Let me just get that clear right now. So it sounds like, I mean, the only thing missing from these statements is the phrase time-honored tradition. This is Vince's alphabet, Vince's vocabulary.
So then in the middle of the show, in the middle of Raw, WWE issued a statement, and here it is. When Sasha Banks and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of tonight's Monday Night Raw. During the broadcast, they walked into WWE Head of Talent Relations John Laurinaitis' office with their suitcases in hand.
Yeah, they don't just share one.
Placed their tag team championship belts on his desk and walked out. They claimed they weren't respected enough as tag team champions. And even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and construct their match, they claimed they were uncomfortable in the ring with two of their opponents, even though they've had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show.
Yeah, nobody gets hurt in a fight.
Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract.
Our puppets, once we shove our hands up their asses, are expected to fucking do the Kukla Frananali bit. Anytime we want, and we control their every move. We control the horizontal. We control the vertical. We control all that you see and hear. I am the control voice, and you are going to the outer limits. They want, and see, that's where they, and that sounds like Vince too, but that's where they get heat. remember when Vince tried to make himself babyface against Brett? It's so fucking obnoxiously not only worded so assholishly, but also the remaining fans that they have left of this program, they grab them by the collar, hold them down, put a knee in their fucking groin, and start slapping them in the face back and forth with all of this is fake and phony, and we tell all these people what to do. And regardless of whether they're your favorite wrestlers or not, they will fucking hop over this goddamn thing, or they'll carry that barge and lift that bale, or bend backwards in limbo under the limbo stick. And it doesn't do anybody any good. Now you've got me pissed off already. We haven't even got through this.
I didn't finish the statement. There's one more line.
I know that.
We regret we were unable to deliver, as advertised, tonight's main event.
Yeah, but then they're trying to appeal to the fans like, yes, we wanted to give you this, but those, well, no, the fans are saying, well, what did you do to make them so unhappy that they fucking left? Did you talk to them like you just worded in that statement? And you know,
and let's add, you know, Naomi has fans, but Sasha Banks is one of the most popular women's wrestlers of all time. She's a big star. The fans there actually do love her.
I don't know. Velvet McIntyre was...
Oh, give me a Velvet McIntyre. Let me ask you about this statement here. This isn't just a statement. This isn't just, let's get our side out there. This is coming from a point of anger. You can see it. What does this say about what they want people to think about the wrestlers? The two things that stuck out here are that they have 8 hours to rehearse and construct their match, and also putting this out there. They were uncomfortable in the ring with two of their opponents, even though they've had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. That's trying to embarrass them. What's that?
Well, without being in the meeting, you will, if you see that you're pitching not to do something, and hopefully they had the plan B. Hopefully they had something else. Right? Because if you just say, I don't want to do that, well, what would you like to do? Well, I don't know. Well, then you're fucked. Right? And I believe that Mike Johnson was reporting that they had some idea that would be a short tag team match and then be beaten down afterwards to set up a different program. Because apparently what they were doing was the reason why they were upset with the creative. Let's bring the people up to date on this. Banks and Naomi would both been in 2 or 3 segments in Raw, building up the idea that they're going to be facing off in this 6-pack challenge. And whoever wins that will face Bianca Belair at the pay-per-view Hell in a Cell. And apparently, Naomi was going to win it and go on to Hell in a Cell and put Bianca Belair over. And apparently, Naomi was going to beat her own partner in this match, and then her partner, Sasha, would go on to put Ronda Rousey over at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, potentially.
Well,
so, go ahead.
Well, I feel like since you're talking about some of this, let me then, because I don't think you know about this, a statement has been released, purportedly from someone close to Naomi and Sasha. So it may cover some of these issues.
Okay, well, then hold on and let me finish the point that I was going to make, just to bring people into that's... Their gripe was that they've been the tag team champions and they were supposed to have some glorious reign as tag team champions, but now they're going to have to fight each other and one's going to beat the other, and then they're going to go and put 2 other girls over in singles matches. The Midnight Express would not have been happy about that situation back in the day. But when I said going into Vince's office, if they had another idea... And when you pitch something like that to Vince and you see that the main reason you have for objecting to the thing and the main thing you'd like to do instead is not landing at all, and you can see it on his face and in his manner, then you start coming up with auxiliary. And, you know, last time the fucking dewdrop sat on my head and you're doing anything, you know, and the brown mustard, anything you can think of to add to your, and it ain't working, right? So I don't know that they went in there and said, no, those fucking girls are too stiff and they're hurting us or whatever the fuck. It's probably something like that. And then that is being used by the office, as you said, to make them look bad.
So here's a statement, and again, it's being attributed to someone close to Naomi and Sasha Banks, and in fact, the person on Twitter is followed by Naomi, and they were given permission to share the story, according to this. Here it is. I'm going to read it verbatim.
Read it word for word instead.
You are approached in February as being put in a tag team, and both being promised big feuds at WrestleMania. You bite the bullet and put everything you got into being a tag team. It works. You get over, win the titles at WrestleMania, and become merch pushers. Well, you got something to say about that?
No, I'm just merch pushers. Actually, they would be merch sellers. The merch pushers would be the stooge from craft services or whatever that's in the hallway actually hawking the merchandise. But nevertheless, it's verbiage.
5 weeks into your reign, you show up to live TV and ready to work. You are told you will be in the main event, and you are happy. You both are then told that one of you will be going over from pinning the other. You have questions why that decision was made and how it helps y'all.
She suddenly went to South Carolina. How it helps y'all?
You request a meeting with your boss to discuss it. Your boss takes the meeting, and everything is actually going well. He understands your concerns. The meeting ends well, and the match is told to be reconstructed. For some reason, producers got mad about that. You then ask, with one of your members going over, what happens to your titles? You are told basically that you will just be carrying the belts. They want to use you both to help both women's champions get over more. Bianca versus Naomi, Sasha versus Ronda. Neither one of you will win the solo titles, and you won't defend your tag titles until Money in the Bank. You ask for another meeting with your boss, but this time you are being called spoiled. A producer walks away screaming. He comes back and tells both of you to fix your attitudes. Y'all have a brief meeting amongst yourselves and decide to stand up for yourselves. You go to another boss and make it clear that you have concerns. Make it clear you just have concerns. You ask, why are we even in the match, and why aren't other women in it? You ask why your titles have no stories for 2 months. Again, you are met with, fix your attitudes. So after one final meeting with yourselves and asking others, you make the ultimate decision as a team. It's sad how one side is trying to create a fucked up narrative. Also, it was asked why were Nikki Ash and Doudrop in the match instead of starting their program tonight. Naomi nor Sasha talked down about being in the ring with either one. I don't know how that got flipped. So I'm not exactly sure about the last part there, but apparently this is from the camp of Naomi and Sasha Banks. What are your thoughts?
Well, and one, again, back to Mike Johnson on pwinsider.com or pwinsiderelite.com if you want to get the good stuff. They said the idea that they may have pitched instead was them to face Nikki Ass and Doudrop and do some kind of thing or whatever the case. But, I mean, everybody's creative is the shits. And I agree with their opinion there. It's stupid. If this was I guess this is I've had all I can stands, I can't stands no more case, but it's not like they're the only ones they're being persecuted by bad creative. Everybody's creative is bad and none of this shit makes any sense. And all their champions are devalued. Having said all that, no, it doesn't make a lick of sense to have tag team champions and then they're in the same match with every woman for themselves and then they fight each other and one beats the other and then they put 2 other people over and they're still champions. No, that's caca. Does it matter anymore? Just to us who, care about the old days and or I guess the person doing it who has some pride in it. I honestly, though, now here's the thing also. I was going to say from a financial standpoint, a professional standpoint, if I was Sasha Banks or Naomi, I would rather be on the pay-per-view putting Bianca Belair or Ronda Rousey over in a main event championship match than working with Nikki Ash and Doudrop.
Well, and again,
wherever,
we don't have the payoffs are done.
Well, but that I was about to say there. Hold on there, cowboy. Pump the brakes. But that would be the old days when you would rather be on a bigger match on the card and on the pay-per-view to make more money. That was for the guaranteed contracts and whatever. So who knows if they wouldn't make any more, any less money. So, I'm actually mostly on their side.
What about fixture attitudes? Would that ever be said to a male wrestler backstage by Bruce or Johnny Ace or whatever other producer they may be referring to if it's not one of them? Fix your attitude?
Yeah, I've probably said that to a couple guys. I mean, it's harsher when a guy says it to a girl, but now I thought the women had women producers. Was it a producer or do they also call the writers producers, or are there wrestling? I don't know. But, I wouldn't be that nice sometimes with a guy, but that's guy to guy. It may be different. And also that's a publicly traded company environment. Maybe as Mama Cornette used to say, straighten up and fly right. But,
and we have heard stories in the past from wrestlers about going in to meet with Vince and everything's fine. And then as soon as you walk out, he forgets everything you just talked about. And whoever the next person in the room gets their story out.
But here's the thing. I've seen this, and this was when he was younger and more nimble of mind, possibly, Vince. But I've seen guys go in and pitch whatever and ask for whatever, or the idea is whatever. And the way that Vince, he doesn't, unless he's just pissed at the talent or whatever, or just can't be bothered in a bad mood, he doesn't shit on somebody's stuff, right? But the way that he receives it, he can sometimes agree to nothing, say no, make no declarative statement, yay, nay, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, just say things that, and the talent will go out thinking that something's going to be done, and he said absolutely nothing's going to change verbally. It's just the way he does it somehow. But that was long ago. Maybe he doesn't do that anymore. But did they think that, okay, he's going to do this, and he just humored their pitch and never really said that he was, but they thought it, and then he says do it anyway. Who knows? But I like the spunk. They're full of spunk. Old Sasha and Naomi for just saying, well, all right then. Well, but I don't know what you can get away with these days and what you can't up there. But it sounds to me like Vince ain't fucking happy, nor sleepy, or dopey, or doc, or whatever. And I don't know if they'll be back because they've already laid the groundwork verbally that they breached their contract and they're unprofessional and et cetera. And that's part of, they don't give a fuck about telling everybody, yes, we control all of their movements and this is all fake and they're puppets that, when we say jump, they say how high, because they're setting up the unprofessional argument. They're setting up the breach of contract argument, and they're setting up also, and Mike Johnson had, Mike, I'm sorry, thank you for doing my work for me today, but you're so good. He had a great line. He said, it looks like they're setting it up for, they can make the claim that if you're in the Walking Dead, you don't get to argue that you don't want to get bit by the zombie this week. But public pissing contests like this just makes the company look bad. What?
The zombies don't pay for their own wardrobe.
Well, yeah, but
the zombies don't pick their own name and have the company own it. I mean,
it was a cute line.
I know. I'm just saying that there's obviously an argument against that, though.
But, well, yes, and the main argument is when the WWE as a company does this, number one, it makes wrestling look even further phony and fake and like shit. And it technically, even subliminally, devalues everybody's opinion of the whole thing, because these guys and girls are not the wild-ass, uncontrollable superstars that they appear to be. They're, a bunch of fucking Disney on parade, workers that are supposed to wear the Mickey Mouse costume. And it makes the company look like the evil empire, which they've already portrayed themselves as on television. And it gives the fans sympathy for the talent here, for Sasha and for Naomi. No matter what they say, the talent, as we've talked about, is going to get the sympathy, and the company's going to get the heat, because they've been doing it for 25 years since they screwed Bret Hart. This is their reputation now. And it's their reputation with not only with the fans, but with the talent. So what are they fucking doing? It's just everybody has to fucking go public now. Shit like this used to happen in the wrestling business, and you wouldn't hear about it. And the only reason why we talk about it 30 or 40 years later or whatever is because eventually the guys told the stories to the other guys, and now that everybody's smart, all the old timers share their stories, but nobody knew it then. But now it's instantaneous, and everybody, in some respect, either the business or the talent or the company looks bad, but usually just the company and the business. In this case, it's usually, the other companies that the talent looks bad when they no show or bail or knock them or whatever, like with Tony, because Tony has gone to great pains to be a babyface with his base audience. And most of the other companies don't sell the fans on the fact that they are owned by evil billionaires and their offspring and progeny that controls all their favorite superstars' fucking lives. So this is the only everywhere else when the talent does anything stupid in the way of, public relations or walking out or getting sideways with the company or doing something on Twitter, the heat either is spread or the company comes out kind of babyface. But this is the exact opposite with the WWE, and they've been doing this. Like Tony Storm would rather leave the country on her own dime than work for these people anymore. Hardy just, who knows what he was doing. Maybe he didn't even know he was leaving.
Midway through a match, he's like, I'd rather be doing anything else but this here.
Yeah.
That is crazy because, before we recorded, you and I were talking about different instances in history when someone walked out, specifically when the fans knew about it, like Ernie Ladd in front of the fans or a situation like that.
And for the younger listeners, Ernie Ladd was noted as, if he came into a territory or a town and business came up with him in the main event, which it usually did, he wanted to be paid for it. And sometimes when it would come to the blow off and he'd be there and he would look at the house and he would figure the payoff that he felt he deserved for the work he'd put into it. And if the promoter didn't agree to it, then he'd grab his suitcase and walk to the ring, walk around the ring so all the people could see him, and then walk out the front door. And then let him try to tell the fans that his plane was canceled or whatever, right?
Yeah, what would they have done?
Usually he got what he wanted.
Yeah, what would Ernie Ladd, Billy Graham, and Ivan Koloff have done if Vince Sr. had tried to pull anything like this with them?
Well, they
would have walked out in front of the fans.
It wouldn't have got that far.
It wouldn't have got that far because logic was applied to wrestling booking back then.
Yes, and Vince would have backed down and figured out some way, months or potentially years down the road, to get some kind of even. But that was then. This is, and also, let's face it. Ivan Koloff, Billy Graham, and Ernie Ladd were more integral to the business of Vince Sr. at that time than Sasha Banks and Naomi are to the overall scheme of the business of Vince Jr. at this time.
Absolutely. That's 100% true. And
so,
when we were talking about other examples, obviously Lex Luger jumping out of the cage and leaving Wrestling.
Yes, out in the middle of the match. And folks, we're not going to go into all these history lessons. They are on our YouTube channel, which is almost at 300,000 subscribers. Well, hell, you know that. You're listening to us now. But Luger was in the match with Brody, and Brody was not happy, and Brody decided to just not sell. And Luger got freaked out, nervous, confused, bum-fuzzled, verklempt, And finally, and wasn't he, Bill Alfonso was there. Was he?
He was a referee.
A manager, or he was refereeing?
Yeah.
And Luger asked Fonzie, what's he doing? Fonzie, I don't know. And Luger just climbed the fucking cage and jumped down and walked to the locker room, and that was his last night there. But he had a place to go.
That's right. It's easy to do that when you know you have a landing spot. We don't know what's going to happen with
That's
Sasha.
when he showed up at Crockett a few weeks later. Bearcat Wright, let's enumerate a couple of them. Bearcat Wright left the ring in, well, what was it? It was one of the Los Angeles towns. Was it San Diego?
Was it San Bernardino?
San Bernardino. One of those saints. Bearcat Wright had roughed up Fred Blassie and double-crossed him and not dropped their version of the world title out there as he was supposed to. And what was this, 1964-ish, 5-ish?
I was going to say 63, but I got to go back and check now. Yeah.
Close enough for rock and roll. And so on that particular night, Bearcat Wright goes to the ring against who he thinks is, I can't even remember who the scheduled opponent was, and he sees Judo Gene LaBelle, the son of Eileen Eaton and brother of Mike LaBelle, the promoters, and obviously Ronda Rousey's judo coach and legendary movie, TV, film actor. He's walking to the ring instead, and Bearcat Wright knew what was up, and all 6'7", 265 or 70 pounds of him, former pro boxer, climbed out of the ring and departed. And did he leave him the belt, or did he take the belt?
That is a great question. I'm not sure. I don't remember hearing about him taking the belt, but I'd have to go back and check.
Well, you know what? If he was already in the ring, he may have passed the belt off and the ring announcer had it. And that may have been part of the plan, Smithers. There was, you mentioned Korchenko. Tell the people the Korchenko story from Mid-South.
Korstia Korchenko, one of the very worst fake Russian wrestlers in the history of wrestling. Couldn't work, couldn't do a promo, just nothing. His look wasn't even good. But they put like a red shirt and suspenders on him and furry boots, and he's a Russian. So he's in the middle of this big feud. Bill Watts, attacked by the Russians. They're putting the flag on the cowboy. You forget it's Nikita and Ivan making a guest appearance from Crockett Promotions. But Korstia Korchenko with Eddie Gilbert, that's who he's managing. So then whatever happened, there were a few instances during the Bill Watts 1986 comeback, and one night Korchenko got tired of getting his ass kicked by Watts, or thought he was about to get his ass really kicked by Watts, I don't remember, and left and never came back.
Well, I think what it was, he was big, but he was bad, as you mentioned. He was rotten and he was clumsy, and I think Watts started giving him some receipts. And I wouldn't be surprised if the boys weren't winding him up also, because he became convinced on the last night that if he went to the ring, this was the night Watts was just going to beat the shit out of him. And he just freaked out and said, fuck it, and left. Now that we think about it, he didn't actually walk out. He checked out mentally during his last ever pro wrestling match, that the original Master Blaster. Whatever.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Remember? It was partners with Kevin Nash. It was late 1990 in WCW, and it was the Cobo Arena in Detroit. And I was watching the match with, I can't remember if Bobby Fulton was back there that night or not, and they were against Brad Armstrong and Tim Horner. And this one guy, he had been one of the muscle-bound trainees that they picked up, and they were trying to get, Ole was booking cheap Road Warrior clones. And he screwed up with Brad Armstrong a spot 3 different times, the same spot 3 different times in 3 different ways. And finally, you could say, I was all the way in the back of the Cobo, and I'm looking at the ring from that distance, and you could see this guy. I've never seen it before in wrestling. He just turned around to his partner, Nash. He was standing in the middle of the ring. Nash is in the corner. And the guy just turned around and spread his arms out wide and shook his head like you could see him from every corner of the Cobo visually saying, what the fuck is going on here? And they finished the match somehow. And that night, he didn't even stay overnight. The guy fucking checked out of his hotel and went to the bus station apparently and left town and was never seen again. And the guy that became Eddie Gilbert named him Big Al Green. I think he took his spot as the next Master Blaster.
But there are various instances we could talk about in history when we were talking about it before we got on the air, the funny thing was that you and I didn't remember any of the recent ones, which is interesting, but here we are. Less than 6 months into the year, and 3 different wrestlers have walked out publicly from WWE. What does that say?
Well, and then there's the asterisk. Steve Austin was the canary in the coal mine back in 2003.
Yeah.
But that was a Vince McMahon, Steve Austin. Who knows what was in Vince's bonnet that day that he couldn't see that Steve's gripe was valid, even though Steve has said in hindsight that he shouldn't have just left and took it too far because he was in a frame of mind. But that was a one-on-one thing between the two most important people in the company pretty much at that time. This was just, I mean, I don't know whether they're trying to run a tight gulag up there so that none of the other farm workers get antsy or whatever, but they shouldn't be treating the talent like this at this point when they've already got so much heat with fans and the roster.
Obviously, we don't want to go on and on about this all day, so I guess one last thing to look at here is, if you're WWE, do you fight them and try to get them? I mean, I'm sure you don't want them to come back, but you got this contract, and WWE does like to punish people at different times. What do? Do you just release them and say enough of this? Or do you hold them to that contract so they can't go to AEW with different names? And also, Naomi, her husband, is one of the Usos. And obviously, he's figured in there.
Well, oh boy, you know what? I didn't even think about that. I don't know whether I knew that. If I did, I didn't care enough to retain it. That creates a sticky situation because in the household there's going to be some heat because depending on which Uso it is, there's already an Uso with some heat. You know what I'm saying? He's not exactly the poster boy for careful driving. So now, if that is he the Uso that she's married to?
I have to check.
If that's so, now we got this guy over here. We're pushing him to the moon, the biggest paying job he's ever had, and he's gotten a couple of DUIs and some bad publicity for us. And his wife just fucking walked out of an advertised match, caused us to rewrite half of our 3-hour national television bore fest. I don't know if the McMahons are going to be inviting them to Greenwich for the Christmas party.
It is, in fact, Jimmy Uso, who's her husband, who has had the problems with the DUIs.
Boy, howdy.
But again, the Usos, cousins with Roman Reigns, who's never been more important to WWE than now. They're going to try to do everything they can to get more dates, not less dates. Part of the Samoan family. Put The Rock in there too, I guess, somehow. How do you deal with that? But again, Sasha Banks is the one that's the bigger star.
Hold on here. How far would Roman Reigns want to go? Say, okay, what's Roman to Uso, the cousin? Yeah. How far would Roman Reigns want to go at a multi-million-dollar contract for limited dates per year? Is he also going to go in and say, and now make sure you don't fuck my cousin's wife around? I don't know if it depends on how Vince takes this and whether he cools off or not. But to your question that you asked, they ain't going to get out of whatever contract they've got to go to AEW unless Vince McMahon just says, you know what, fuck them, they don't exist to me. And I don't think that will happen because that would set the precedent that, well, if you don't like your creative and you go home, they'll let you out of your contract and you can go play with the fucking fun crowd. So they ain't going to AEW for any period of time that they're signed up to the WWE. If they want to continue to be highly paid professional wrestlers, they're probably going to have to come back, or they could be the people who do the Twitch and the other stuff, all those people that make a bunch of money without the WWE. But I don't think they're going to AEW anytime soon.
And Sasha's done acting. She was in The Mandalorian, which of course is a big hit for Disney Plus, and Naomi's husband works there, and I know she's been a dancer in the past. And again, there's Twitch, and there's all sorts of fans who, especially for female wrestlers, will pay all sorts of money just to see them, just to have them say hello.
Now watch out, folks. Don't any GoFundMes that get set up. Make sure that you're actually donating to these poor downtrodden wrestlers instead of somebody pretending to be them and catfishing, as the kids say, right?
That's right.
Who was it? Becky Lynch just said, no, don't give to my GoFundMe. Now Naomi, no, they're fine for money. I think they'll be okay. They'll make the rent for the next few months.
All right, well, there it is, our breaking news audio. Sasha Banks and Naomi walk out of Monday Night Raw. I kind of wish I could have done the same thing when I had it on last night, but we'll review it on The Experience this weekend, and of course, wherever you find your favorite podcast on the... There it is. And on the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Any final words, Jim?
Yeah, it's a fluid situation, and as long as it keeps trickling or dripping, we're going to lap it up. So we'll be back with more on The Experience.